This podcast was recorded before recent federal policy changes impacted many of the programs discussed and may not reflect the most current information.
Welcome to How to Not Kill Your Community, a podcast from the Delaware Community Foundation. In each episode, we interview experts to explore the choices we make as Delawareans, how we spend our taxes, steward our land, build housing, and how those choices impact the places we call home. What happens if we neglect our libraries, turn away newcomers, let philanthropy fade? Most importantly, how do we not kill our communities? I'm Stuart Comstock-Gay, President and CEO of the DCF. Thank you for listening. Welcome back to our podcast, which this year we're calling How to Not Kill Your Community. And I'm thrilled today to be with my friend Mariah Calagione and looking forward to our discussion, which we will tell you about in what we're going to talk about in a moment. Because as you remember, all of these interviews are about ways we can kill our community.
Or not kill our
Or
community.
not. So, little background, a lot of you all will know Mariah, co-founder of Dogfish Head Brewery, and recently retired as the social impact leader at the Boston Beer Company. Raised in Milford, where she met her husband Sam during high school, and they established Dogfish in 1995. And Mariah and I were bonding over having met our spouses when we were in school. Mariah's early roles encompassed marketing, PR, social media, and then focusing on philanthropic initiatives through the Beer and Benevolence program at Dogfish, and has served on various boards, including the Nature Conservancy, University of Delaware, and, the Delaware Community Foundation, where she's still an active board member. Mariah and Sam have 2 adult children and continue to contribute actively to their business and local community. Welcome, Mariah.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
We're thrilled. And again, we're here today in our office in Lewis, which is a beautiful new space we have. When you're driving down Savannah Street, take a look across from the Zwanadale Museum, and here we are. And we love it, and it's a tiny space. So this podcast, as you know, examines different ways we can kill or not kill our community. And it's based on this book, 13 Ways to Kill Your Community by Doug Griffiths. And he writes this book with titles like Don't Cooperate, That's a Way to Kill Your Community. And so he said, this is an interesting way to get to really important issues in our community. So today we're going to talk about what happens when we say we don't need philanthropy, ignore philanthropy, because you're a philanthropy person, among other things. So Mariah.
Yes.
Why shouldn't people be responsible for themselves rather than participating on or relying on charity? And what does happen if we let philanthropy just fade away?
Well, I think everybody, in an ideal world, everybody does want to be responsible for themselves, right? But the world is not ideal, and sometimes people need, a helping hand, a hand up, whatever you want to call it. And for as long as I know of in American history, like that's been part of the ethos here, that probably more global history too, but people want to help other people. The golden rule exists for a reason. And so I think it'd be great if everybody could be and wanted to be responsible for themselves and was successful at that, but it doesn't work that way. And I think it's part of the collective community responsibility to make sure that we're aware of each other and how we're all doing.
Yeah. I'll say a moment about religious traditions too, right?
Yes.
In Judaism, in Islam, in Christianity, tithing or the various other means by which that's a responsibility.
Yeah.
It's pretty interesting.
It's not new.
It's not new. I was some years ago in Turkey, actually, as I have family in Turkey, and visiting with the Foundation Association there. And they were talking and said, well, it's complicated how we manage with foundations because we have 600-year-old philanthropies here. And I thought, wow, yeah. That's something to learn from, isn't it? So not 600 years old,
no.
But Dogfish Head Brewery.
30 years old.
30 years. Has, since your founding of that company, been very involved in the community and very generous through the Beer and Benevolence program and otherwise. Direct grants and donations to coastal Delaware organizations focused on arts, environmental stewardship, and community impact. Talk about why you did that.
Well, it started very organically. We started as a single restaurant in downtown Rehoboth as part of a small town seasonal community, part of a restaurant community, part of a local business community. And, people would naturally walk in the door and say, oh, can you donate a gift certificate, or can you donate some beer, or can you donate some money to this local nonprofit event that's going on? And so, of course we got involved in things like that, from the get-go. And it wasn't until, years into the business that we sort of formalized the beer and benevolence program and sort of said, okay, how do we want to approach this? What's our annual budget? Where do we want to lean in? What areas of interest, focus make sense for Dogfish Head under this umbrella of beer and benevolence? But it did start purely organically from, requests from our local community.
So why do you think it's worthwhile or important or advisable for corporations to do this kind of thing?
Well, we started as a small business and grew because of the support of our community, because people walked in the door, because people went into stores and bought our beer, our spirits. So this is the community that supported us and allowed us to get going. So it only makes sense, again, thinking about the golden rule, it makes sense if you're getting support from a community, you want to support that community. And every single person that works at Dogfish Head lives, not just works in our community, but lives in our community, whether that's downtown Rehoboth or Milford or Millsboro or Dover or wherever. So they're part of the community as well.
So you've kind of answered this, but how then do you balance your business goals, your goal to make profit and your goal to be a thriving business with this work, with the charity work?
Well, there's no end to what you could do, right? Or any of us, any organization could do. But if you're not around, then you can't do any of it. So you have to make sure that you sort of know what you can do, right? And know what you can do sustainably. So it has to be a sustainable part of your business. It has to make sense for your business. I think for us, like I said, we had some years under our belt before we formalized it. And so we knew that arts and environment made sense for Dogfish Head. It made sense for what we were doing with our spaces, with our products, with our people. Like those were, we do a lot with independent artists. We do a lot with environmental organizations. So those two kind of naturally rose to the forefront of sort of where we wanted to lean in. So when we started, we had a formula. We were like, okay, $1 per barrel of beer, we're going to put into our beer and benevolence fund. And then, as we grew, that continued to grow, which was great. And we started at, a couple 100 barrels a year, and by the time we walked away from that formula for a lot of different reasons, we were making over 300,000 barrels of beer a year, which equated to a similar amount of budget that we put into our beer and benevolence fund. But then we started making other products, and the formula didn't work as well. And with the restaurants, so we said, okay, well this is going to be our approach. We now have an annual budget. We oftentimes have to massage that a little bit in terms of oops, we went over, or this group needs a little more help. But it gives us guardrails. So that's sort of how we got to that.
And you all have been pretty consistent about arts and environment.
Yes.
And that's driven by you and Sam, your goals, or the people who work there all said, hey, this is us?
I think it's a little bit of all of that. We all created this company, this brand together. And so that's where sort of it made sense for the brand to be. And we've done a lot with environmental organizations from a recipe standpoint. We've worked with regenerative grains. We've worked with a lot of local nonprofits that do environmental work to do collaboration beers. And then we've hired and brought on a lot of artists over the years to do projects for our labels, for our packaging, for our merchandise. We're doing a big project right now with the Grateful Dead. We've done stuff with illustrators that work in the mostly record gig poster world. We've probably worked with a dozen, probably more than that now, but artists over the years that do labels for us. So it's part of who we are and how we sort of present ourselves as Dogfish Head beer, Dogfish Head spirits to our drinkers. And so really just made sense.
I love that. To our drinkers,
Yeah.
which I guess is what they are.
They are. Our visitors, our guests, if you're talking about the hotel. But
So you also have in this area particularly, I would imagine, and perhaps elsewhere, a real reputation as being deep in your community. And what I like a lot about is the way you talk about, hey, these are our customers, these are the people who support us. And so it becomes a very integrated thing. It's not just about giving, and it's not just about giving to somebody else. It's about hiring them, listening to them, being a part of the community. So your philanthropy is that, yeah?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And we have coworkers who sit on various boards and volunteer with different organizations. And then our beer and benevolence leader, oftentimes coworkers will come to him and say, "Oh, our daughter is interested in, animals and like saving animals. Like, what are some of the local nonprofits that we work with?" And like, give us some guidance of like who to reach out to that she could go volunteer with. So like it's more than just like writing a check. We also do a lot of volunteering with our coworkers through our beer and benevolence partners. And, I think it is a little bit more comprehensive. But yeah, like I said, these people are part of the community.
Do you find that your engagement in the community brings people to want to work with you? As employees or partners?
I think so. I mean, we just hired for our beer and benevolence role at the end of last year, and we pulled the job posting down after like a week and a half because we had 150 resumes like off the bat, like people wanting to come do that awesome work, which sort of made me proud. But we do have a lot of people that want to come to work for Dogfish Head, want to work with us because they know of what we do in the community. And, of course, it comes back to us in good ways like that. But also when we had to go before one of our local towns to get a permit to expand, we had like some of our regulars come to the hearings and speak on our behalf. But it wasn't, "Oh, I love their beer," or "I love their burgers." Right. It was, this company has done stuff for nonprofits that are important to me. This company has like stepped up and always been around. So it did come back in ways that we weren't even anticipating. That was kind of cool.
So that's an interesting thing. Talk a little bit, if you will, about the advice for corporations about why this matters. And of course, in Delaware, DuPont was a famously community-involved organization. Less so today because of their scale is smaller. But everybody, when we look at people who are engaged, a lot of the old DuPont people are still really engaged because that was the tradition. Talk about the advice for companies.
Yeah, I mean, DuPont's a great example. And you think of other big companies, whether that's MBNA, whether that's Bank of America, that give back in various ways. We don't have as many big companies at that scale down here, but we have a lot of smaller companies like ourselves that are very engaged in community and very philanthropic. And I think as they and we grow in our presence and our visibility in the community, it hopefully models for other newer companies like, hey, this is kind of how we approach things in Sussex County, in Delaware. Like, we all know each other. Half of us are related to each other. So you gotta stay close and be community. But I don't know. I mean, yes, there's going to be some good that comes out of giving back to your community for any organization, but it also has to come from a real interest in wanting to do that beyond just the checking of the box, I think.
One of the troubling trends in America is that fewer people are donating and giving time. That for decades and decades, for 50 years, about 70% of Americans donated to organizations or volunteered time, and those numbers are closer to 50% now, which to me is a sign of mistrust and divisiveness in all kinds of ways. And I don't like to just talk about the partisan thing, because that's there, but it's also about class and education levels and race and all.
And it's a trend. It's not just.
And it's a trend. And so I think the work you do at Dogfish Head, and I said this because you talk about modeling for other people, that it's not just about helping your business, but it does help your business. It's about serving the community, but also the community serving you. I think that's just so important, and more people need to hear that.
Yeah. Well, and I think whether you're a corporation or work at a corporation or no matter, as individuals, we need to model this. Like the reason that, like I grew up in a small town. You said, like, I grew up in Milford, Delaware. My grandfather was a volunteer firefighter. My mom volunteered in the school every week. My dad, raised money for a lot of politicians and going out and working the streets, and worked a lot with Ducks Unlimited. So that was kind of modeled for me growing up. Everyone I knew, everyone's parents that I knew, were involved in community in some way. And that, our beer and benevolence program, and sort of how we do what we call Benevolence Day, where we actually go out and volunteer, all of our coworkers, that was 100% modeled on something that my mom did. And so I tell all of our coworkers that, my mom, she was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer and told she had 8 months to live. And that year for Christmas, she gave us all tool belts and said, on Martin Luther King Day, we're going to work for Habitat for Humanity. And of course we all showed up because we're like, Mom's dying, we gotta go. We can't bail on this, right? So we showed up, and we did that for years and years and years with her. And she's still with us.
She said, I never had it. I was just getting you to volunteer.
And now Dogfish Head started that, and this April 7th we'll have 180 plus coworkers working in Sussex County for the day at 20 different nonprofit partners. But that became out of something that she modeled for myself and my siblings and my family. So I think we can't rely on corporations to do it. We can't rely on, government entities to do it. We have to get out there and do something. And we all have interests. We all appreciate the work that, our nonprofit organizations do, whether that's a social mission, whether that's an art cultural mission, and it will go away if people don't continue to volunteer. I mean, that's why it exists. But I also think that that's why we have so much great stuff in particularly coastal Delaware, because we have so many people who have relocated here, so many people who've grown up here who see that and want to keep that going and get involved.
Were our mothers sisters or something? Because it sure sounds like a lot of stuff I had.
It's the Delaware way.
Well, in my case, it's the Nebraska-Ohio way. It's something, but it's a lot of places. So one of the challenges is because fewer people are volunteering and participating, and the culture of that has shrunk. Your mom inculcated it in you, but how do we convince young people and anybody that this really matters in their lives?
Well, it's interesting because I think young people talk more about volunteering and service in school than they ever have. So many schools now have service requirements, but why hasn't that translated into more people volunteering in the community? Maybe once they get out of school, maybe we haven't gotten to that yet, that these young people are now going to be adults. So I'm not really sure, but we got to figure it out because, just here in Lewis, there's probably 25 super active, engaging, volunteer driven nonprofit organizations that are just doing all sorts of cool things. Every town should have that, right? And why not? I mean, maybe it's because people are working more, maybe because a lot more families are doing sports outside of school and they don't have their weekends free. There's probably 1,000 reasons why. But I think continuing to model that, continuing to talk about it, both from the people who are volunteering, but also the nonprofits who need volunteers, you got to talk about it. I mean, the Lewis Fire Department is, all the local fire departments, they're volunteer run, and they're having to be worried about whether they can provide service because people aren't volunteering for it. Whereas back in the day, that was kind of what, you did is when you were in high school is you did junior volunteer or junior volunteer firefighting. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but we got to keep.
Something's lost. One of our core values at the foundation is joy. And we talk about that a lot, about how this work is joyful. And I said that it changes your body chemistry, and that's true, but it brings a broader joy in the community. And somehow we're not getting that message out.
When you're going to meet people that you might not otherwise meet, and expand your own circle of people and expand your community. And
so
that's
true.
Awesome, important too.
And in a time when we're increasingly in our little tribes,
Yes.
And we're living in communities of people just like us, and we're hanging out with people who go to our church or aren't churchgoers, and we're hanging out with people who have our politics. We're splitting in ways that makes it harder to meet people who are different. So,
Yeah.
and that's
Even
a great point.
Like online, like we're fed what we like,
Yeah.
right? Even if let's just say you have a couple hundred friends on Facebook, they're probably a very diverse thinking
Yeah.
group, but you're going to see more and more of what you think, right? So it's like, even that, like, I don't know, it started out like, oh, and now I'm connected to all these people I hadn't been connected with, but I don't know, it didn't seem to keep going in that direction.
I think it's one of the things we wrestle with, of course, is how do we bridge to different kinds of people, get all of us bridging for different kinds of people. I think that's the challenge as we go forward. Let me go to this. Your husband, Sam, who you met in high school, has mentioned that you both believe in the good karma that comes from giving back to the communities that sustain our business. How have you seen that come full circle?
Well, I mean, from a like clear, like transactional view, like we did have to go in front of the town and sort of get permission to do something, like get a permit expanded or whatever. And the people that showed up to talk on our behalf were talking about what we do for the community, how we partner with nonprofits. They weren't talking about our beer. So like that.
But they probably would in another setting.
Oh yeah, of course, right. But like that wasn't their reason of why the town should grant us this permit. Like they make great beer, or I love going there for a burger, right? It was, they give back to the community. So again, who would have ever thought that that's the way something would have played out at a town like planning and zoning hearing? But that was something of like karma coming back to us, and we were like, whoa, that's pretty cool. Not only that it helped us get the permit that we needed, but that work had been recognized, right? And that our coworkers doing what they do to give back doesn't go completely without notice. We know the nonprofits appreciate it, but also their volunteers and their supporters see it and appreciate it.
So Mariah Calagione, thank you so much. We are lucky to have you in our community, and we're lucky to have Dogfish Head beer in the community, and your connectedness and your clear commitment that giving to the community gives back and makes all of us better. And
thank you, and the DCF for the great work that you do.
Thanks. How to Not Kill Your Community is a podcast written and produced by the Delaware Community Foundation. Thank you to our producers at 1440 Film Company in Wilmington. The Delaware Community Foundation, DCF, stands at the intersection of generosity and community transformation. As experts in community need, we guide individuals and organizations to opportunities that impact causes they care about the most. We manage charitable funds, distribute scholarships, advise donors, and grant to nonprofits, providing leadership to cultivate the future of philanthropy in Delaware. Visit us at delcf.org for more information.